Hello, guys. Welcome to Wisdom Media. We have today with us the apologist Eric Hernandez. We're going to be discussing a pretty interesting topic on free will. He's going to be defending free will. It's going to be a friendly discussion, but we're going to be talking about free will, and I'll be taking the Calvinist position for predeterminism based on the doctrine of double predestination. And yeah, I really hope that you guys like it. So. Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience can know a little bit about you?
My name is Eric Hernandez. I am the apologetics lead for the Baptist General Convention of Texas, which encompasses organizing 3 what we call the unapologetic evangelism conferences, and just doing training and evangelism with churches and individuals, and being able to come on great shows like this.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's honestly it's an honor to have you, man. It's I'm really glad we have you here because there's not that many people that can debate free will as good as you, man. So it's going to be an honor to share the same life, man. It'll be pretty cool. And but yeah, I guess we're going to jump into a little bit into the topic of the day. And you want me to start, or you want to start?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it. Okay. All right. First, when it comes to free will, in order to know free will, first we got to know what we're dealing with the theory of decision making, how we actually deciding some stuff. So as Eric has mentioned in previous videos, we have desire, we have will, and I have one more that I forgot because I didn't take notes. But yeah, so in the case of free will, it entices that that a person is the first cause of a decision and that is not external to oneself. However, I would argue that that is not the case, and I will be making a case on how we can, through a decision-making process, through natural processes, we can derive a predeterminist view from all of our decisions that we make. And the second part of my case, I will be making a case that randomness, that free will either even entices randomness, and the randomness is impossible. And I'll either, if Eric takes the case that free will is random, and if he doesn't take the case that free will is random and takes the case that that free will has a ordered, a pattern, but basically an ordered pattern that can be deciphered, that by necessity, if something has a pattern, has an order, must be deciphered by necessity. So first, with the decision-making system, that the hypothesis that I'll be presenting today will be that it works as a scale. So pretty much whenever you're going to be making a decision, you got stuff like you got some big factors. For example, let's say if you're trying to see if I'm going to be picking up my mom from work, I guess one of the factors that could be a big on the scale of the decision-making scale would be, for example, if there's let's say there's a terrorist on the street and I cannot go through there and I got to stay home, and they're shooting the apartment complex, something like that. That would be a pretty big situation, a pretty big factor from which I wouldn't go out to pick up my mom. And so I like, no one will be that crazy like to go out when there's a shooter roaming around our neighborhood. So it'll be irrational for a person to actually go out, and unless some other factor comes into place. So Eric, I don't know if he will try to argue that, for example, with this case, he could say that one can still will to go out, maybe because one is a gun owner and is trying to shoot the attacker. However, that will be another predetermined factor in the environment that will be affecting the decision making for him to grab his gun and try to fight the attacker. So as you can see, there's a naturalistic cause that caused the individual to be influenced in order to go out when regularly. Without this factor, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be the case that a person would go out. Other way that the person would go out would be if the house was on fire or something because an explosion or whatever, and the person had to go out. So the person would dismiss the shooter because you got to keep priorities. So a person wouldn't freely choose to be in the environment of dying by a fire unless another factor comes into place. So I would say that we can do the same system to everything that is going on around, and the way it forms with the scale. So again, you got the situation with the shooter, but however, if you're going to pick your mom, so if you don't have all of these factors and you have some softer factors, let's say some softer factors like you got to go to the supermarket. A person would measure that picking up your mother, she could get mad. She could maybe she doesn't have transportation, or maybe her car broke down, whatever. A person would analyze that your mother is more important and would pick the mother instead of going to the supermarket, unless you brought in some other factor, such as maybe you have a terrible relationship with your mother, and now you wouldn't choose to go pick up your mother, but that'll be because of a factor that we now plug into the equation. So at no point at all so far, we in this case we will see anything that will be internal for the person to be the first cause. But as it probably, if we need to be more clear, I guess we'll go more deeply into it. But I think I made my point clear that we cannot be the first cause, because there's always something external that weighs in a decision-making scale, and whichever way it weighs in more, either through a big factor or a combination of a lot of small factors, you get to a decision-making through a scale. All right, so now going through the randomness process, there's nothing random. So if random free will,
maybe we can. Do you want to, instead of like laying out a case each, since we're kind of just doing it extemporaneously?
Yeah, I guess you can jump in if you want. That's cool.
Well, I would just say maybe we can just take one point at a time, since we're kind of both just doing it extemporaneously. So unless you wanted to finish your case, I don't know if you did.
Well, no, man, we can continue like that. So yeah, it's a discussion anyways, I mean, so there's no openings in discussions, but yeah, so I guess you can jump in and just comment whatever.
Okay. So I'm trying to kind of piece together what you're arguing. So it's so to kind of reiterate, or maybe I guess to just briefly give my position is, so I would hold to the view that human beings have what's called libertarian free will, kind of as you alluded to. And I would say that, just in brief, that if you're the first mover of your will or actions, or if you're the source of your will or actions, then you're the first mover, and thus you have libertarian free will. In other words, if I were to pick my hand up to vote and nothing external to me caused that hand to go up, then I would say I had free will. But suppose if I were to be shocked by a taser, then that was something that causally determined my hand to go up, and thus I didn't have free will in that instance. Now, it sounds like you're saying that we can't be the first mover. If I understood you correctly, you said because there's always something external that weighs in. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. That'll be the same for determinism. There's always something external that determines, either from your past experiences, from your environment, from the people around you that influence you. Yeah, I guess different one, but I guess we can go.
What makes that a cause? Because it sounds like you're describing influences, which no libertarian denies that there are influences, but I would say that influences don't cause my actions, they merely influence them, and it's still up to me as a first mover as to whether or not I choose to act or refrain from acting upon those influences.
Well, I would say that is the burden of proof on your side to actually demonstrate where does free will kick in, where do we draw the line between the influences, between the natural processes and influences in our environment, and where do we draw the line from the human being, the first cause. So it's more on your side to to decide it. If not, it will be arbitrary. There must be some reason that they share with us.
Well, no, I don't think so. Especially given the fact since you made the claim that something external is always weighing in, therefore we can't have free will. Given that that's your claim, you would have to bear the burden as to show why influence necessitate or cause an action or a will.
Well, if the example you mentioned was for someone to raise their hand, right? Like raise their hand to vote, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the external influences will be in that case. For example, if we're talking about, it depends on the setting. If we're talking about a classroom and the student picks up their hand to actually vote for a class president or going for a pizza on Saturday or Friday, I would say the external factors that are weighing in this case would be the situation that the environment that the professor actually put in place, bringing the verbal information that there's going to be a pizza party on either Friday or Saturday,
Sure.
and that people got to choose, and there will also be the external influence of.
But note that you're saying influences. You're not saying causes. Influences aren't causes.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, I'm saying the word influence because, as I mentioned before, it's a scale. So when you said scale, it's going to influence one side of the scale on the decision-making scale. In this case, will be for Friday or for Saturday. So when I say influence, I mean for that. I don't mean influence for the being itself.
Right, but all I'm saying is that it just because there's influential factors doesn't make it determinism.
Yeah, but with this process, we know we can predict through psychology how someone is going to act based on these influences. That is why I'm proposing this is a balanced hypothesis on how new external information weighs into either decision that you have.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're equating influences and you're using the phrase weighs in as a substitute for cause, but influences, even just because influences, as you say, weigh in, doesn't make them causes. Just makes them influences.
Yeah, but influence the scale. For example, let's say that let's put a control scenario.
I understand that though.
Yeah, but let's put a control scenario in which we just have a very clear scale with no other factors. So let's say you're in a classroom
With no what? I'm sorry?
with no other factors to weigh in other than the ones we're going to mention. So we're going to go with the ones that we know. So there may be other factors that we don't know, but we're making a scale based on what we do know. So in this scale system, for example, let's say you just have 5 factors. So let's say one of the factors is that the teacher made the case that someone has to, that the whole class has to choose either Friday or Saturday for the pizza party. That is one factor. Let's have another factor that is you are an extrovert person, and you really love pizza, and that you really don't have time on Friday because you're going to go out with your girlfriend, so you're going to go on Saturday. So you have the professor saying the situation of what has to be chosen. You have the busy schedule of the guy. You got your love and desire for pizza, and you got your I don't know if I already said the busy schedule on Friday, but I think you can see the case. So you see, you got all of those factors. You can put it in the scale of, let's say, Saturday. Well, I mean Saturday. I mean for yeah. You put all of those on Saturday. They fit a little bit more with Friday because you got something else to do on Friday. So if it's not all of the factors that are being into place right now, then based on all of those factors and all other factor that goes around, the person will inevitably choose to go on Saturday rather than Friday.
Yeah, but how would you demonstrate that? Because it just seems you're describing factors, which I don't deny that there's influences, and then you go from describing influential factors to therefore it's inevitable. How do you make that jump?
I already heard my burden of proof with this analogy, I guess it's now your turn to bring your case on and try to bring it within the same analogy to try to bring um, how would you put free will? Where would you draw the line between free will and environmental factors that influence our decision making? So I
Well,
think it's now your turn to
I
actually.
guess. Well, I don't. Well, I'd say again, respectfully, I don't think you've borne the burden of proof. I think you just reiterated describing factors and then said, jump to, therefore it's inevitable. I don't see how you made the connection there. But maybe I can ask it this way. What do you think I have to deny as a libertarian that you believe?
Well, pretty much what we already said. That one is the first mover of the action. But
No, but what would I deny? Like what you believe and I believe regarding free will are two different things. But everything you've described so far, except for the part where you jump and say therefore it's inevitable, what do you think I disagree with?
well, first we gotta see why I say that it is inevitable. Remember, I said those are the only factors that go into place. So I'm claiming that those are the only factors because that's how we set it up so that those are the only factors.
Yeah,
So
but
if those
what
are
am I?
factors, would you say that it is inevitable for the person to go on the pizza to vote for the pizza party on Saturday? Those are the only factors.
No.
If those are the only factors, you wouldn't say.
Hmm.
So
But
there's more factors. More factors.
define what you mean by inevitable.
It just couldn't do otherwise.
Okay, well, so I'd first say that I don't hold to the view that the ability to do otherwise is necessary for libertarian freedom to exist. So even if I were to grant that I couldn't do otherwise, it still wouldn't prove that determinism is true.
Yeah, but still, when it comes to the first cause, the first cause would be the person. However, the person in this analogy, the person got an external signal, which will be the voice of the professor, saying this scenario that you guys choose between Friday and Saturday for pizza party, and you also have
So who's the first cause in this scenario?
um, it'll be a combination of several causes. It'll be the professor. It'll be the girlfriend that made plans with the guy of the analogy on Friday. It'll be also jeans for him to like pizza because some people just don't like pizza. So he got the right taste buds for that. And I guess I'm missing
It
one.
sounds like
It's the other. It's everything except the person. It's the factors themselves, like their origin of the factors, rather than the person as the first mover.
so. You're telling me that when the professor spoke, it elicited neuronal firings in the person's brain, which necessarily caused him to choose something.
I mean, yeah, like for example, if I say imagine a pink elephant, you're gonna be imagining a pink elephant if you actually listen to my voice.
I'm not.
Yeah. So pretty much, whenever you get a voice cue in, it's a normal scenario in which you're not debating free will. You actually, it's inevitable unless unless you have some reasons to try to do otherwise. But right now, I would say the factor that predetermined you to say that, which I already expected you to say that, was because you're debating free will and you're debating that there's no external causes that actually cause you to do something. So that external cost of the background to which you're accepting a conversation with me, that got you to say that you actually don't.
That didn't cause me to say it. That influenced me to do that, but it didn't cause me to. How do you define a cause?
That's exactly what I predicted that they were going to say at the pink elephant example.
How do you define a cause?
How do I define a cause? I would say what influences the cost.
A cause is what influences a cause. Is that what you said?
The cost is whatever influence what is being cost. Maybe I don't know. Maybe
so suppose I have two dominoes, and one domino knocks over the other one. Did the first domino influence the fall of the second domino, or did it cause the fall of the second domino?
It caused the
Okay.
second domino.
Yeah, I would agree. So there's a difference between an influence and a cause. But you're telling me that all the combination of these factors necessarily cause, like a domino would, that person to choose a certain action.
Yeah, I would say it's a domino effect. When influence, as already clarified a little bit before, I mean influencing the scale of decision making. So in play, I would say all of those are causes, are a compilation of whatever were the scale tips is it will be the cause of the action. So it works as a cause. When I say influence, that's what I mean. I don't mean influence
So it sounds like you're saying there's not one cause. It's all these influences somehow all of a sudden become a cause when taken together.
It depends on it depends on the scale on.
What do you mean by scale?
Because other factors. It's now imagine let's imagine other set of dominoes. So the way you're thinking, it's a linear domino line, just a line, linear. So, but in this sense, for example, now imagine you have different dominoes from different sides, and now you have a fan over here that pushes a domino here, and you got a ball that rolled over here and pushed the domino that just failed and it flipped, and then you got another, I don't know, a bird fell and crashed with the domino, and it fell now over here. So you got a set of causes. So when you take off some of the other factors, you will get a different solution. So that is why I think there are causes. They're causes, but they interact with each other in order to tip a scale of decision making.
So it's kind of like what I said. So it sounds like you're saying that it's not necessarily one thing, but it's a number of influences or a number of causes. So are they? And this is what I'm confused about when you talk about the scale. Are these causes or influences? Like, with the fan blowing the domino, that was a cause, not an influence. So I guess that's what I'm still unclear about.
Yeah, honestly, that's a pretty good question. I actually didn't thought about it. That's a pretty good question. But let's try to make it that there are causes.
Okay, fair enough. Because this is a common confusion I see amongst Calvinists, and I'm not talking about you in particular, just in general, and or just determinists. I'm not trying to pick on Calvinists, but you are a Calvinist, and that's kind of what we're discussing here. Is that
filters here, man?
Was that?
You don't have to put any filters, man. I don't get offended. I'm a pretty cool guy, man.
Yeah, I'm not doing it for you, more so for the listeners, because I trust you. You're mature enough to know that we're just having a discussion. It is as in other words. So let me maybe perhaps state a few things about my position, and maybe you can just ask me questions about my position. Sure. Is that so? First of all, I don't deny that there are influences and that there are causal determinations that I'm born with. I don't deny that for 1 second. Whatever type of food my mother ate when she was pregnant with me surely influenced my taste buds, and these influences perhaps have I guess without just to repeat the word, influences on what I eat now. But also could be the case that if a mother who is pregnant drinks or smokes or does some type of drugs, it's going to cause effects in the formation of the baby's brain. So I don't deny any of that. My only case for libertarian free will is that if there are instances in which we act as first movers in spite of our influences, in other words, not that I reject influences, but our influence cause me to do an action, they just influence. So if I'm driving by Taco Bell, which I love and I smell it, it's going to influence me to want to pull over and buy it, but I still have to decide whether or not I want to pull over and buy it. So I can resist my influences. I mean, that's the whole point of spiritual formation. That's the whole point of discipleship. That's the whole point of fasting, is that you are biologically determined to want to eat every day. And fasting says, no, you go against your biological determination and you tell your body to submit to the will of your soul. So you submit your flesh in spite of the biological determinations of your body that God gave us. So I don't deny biological determinations or any other kind of influential factors. I'm just saying they're not sufficient to causally determine the action I'm going to take.
Yeah, but again, one of the things I want to clarify is that in every single debate ever, we always both parties have a certain burden of proof. So I'm trying to burn my burden of proof with my system of decision making based on the scale, and I would also like you to describe where do we draw the line between the predetermined factors of the environmental factors and the just external factors, and where does the free will kicks in. So I would like you to point out where free will kicks in.
So
arbitrary so far.
So but I think it's a category fallacy here, because to me, what you're asking, to me at least, is like saying, where do you draw the line between the color blue and the number 2? They're not in the same category. In other words, there's no line to draw. You can have 10 factors that influence your will, or 136 factors that influence your will. There's no line that's drawn. I guess if you wanted to put it in those terms, the only line I would draw is that these things don't causally determine my will. They just influence them.
I think you got my assertion. So what I'm asking is, how do you identify free will when you have these other causal factors taken into place? How do you identify? If you're saying it's a separation between how do you measure the color blue? Well, I would agree that is very fallacious. However, that's not what I'm asking. For example, it's like asking how do you differentiate from a something that will measure the color blue, that would measure the blueness of the color blue, like how in a blue scale or color spectrum scale, and how will you differentiate from measuring some other stuff like centimeters or whatever else. So I'm asking you to actually separate the categories and show me where. How do you differentiate between something that is freely willed by a person, and how do you separate it from the external causes?
Well, I think I've already said that, and the illustration I gave was not measuring the color blue. It was just drawing a line between the color blue and the number 2. In other words, you can't. There is no distinction to be made with further distinction from colors and numbers, other than the fact that they're colors and numbers. So. If something, I'll put it this, because it sounds like you're asking, how do I distinguish between an influence and a cause? And I would say, well, if it causes me to do something, then it's a cause. But if it merely influences but doesn't go as far as to cause, then it's just an influence.
Yeah, but you would say that there's some point in which the will of the person kicks in that can override any amount of causes that are within a decision-making system.
Well, are we talking about causes or influences? I thought we were talking about influences.
No, what I mean right now is that, for example, if you're deciding whether you go to Taco Bell, for example, you got, let's say you don't have any factors for going to, for not going to Taco Bell, and you got all the factors for going to Taco Bell. Let's say you're going to your son's birthday, and they're celebrating him in Taco Bell. Let's say that you have $100 coupon. Let's say that.
But we're still talking about influences, right, or not causes? Because you said causes.
There are causes that will cause another thing. So as we mentioned with the dominoes, you have a different set of causes that when they go together, they can cause a different option depending on how it is arranged and how it is tipped on the scale.
Right. But
what I'm saying is that even though you have all the causes in one part of the scale, how would you override?
So we are talking about causes.
Yeah. So you're saying that you can override what? Let's say you have 10 factors over here for going to Taco Bell. You have 0 factors over here for going to Taco Bell. With your free will position, you would argue that a person can still choose not to go to Taco Bell despite having all the factors over here for going to Taco Bell. So how would you describe what is over here overriding all the factors that are for going to Taco Bell?
I'm still a little bit unclear on what you're getting at, because I still think you're confusing you're switching from causes to influences. if there are factors that cause me to go to Taco Bell, well, then I guess I'm going to Taco Bell. It's like saying it. Like, for example, if I fell off a building, gravity is going to be the cause that pulls me down. So if I'm being caused to fall to the ground, when I'm gonna fall to the ground whether I want to or not, because there is a cause and effect happening. So there's nothing to argue against there. But the interesting thing I would say is that even if I am falling to the ground from a building and gravity is causing me to be pulled downwards, I could still will to not want to fall, even though I couldn't do anything to stop it. But I could still will to stop. I could still will to not want to fall. So I would say there's a good distinction to make. There's a line that we could draw that would be relevant, in that while there may be causal determinations that are beyond my control, such as falling from the sky because of gravity, I can still will not to fall.
I think that is arbitrary. I don't think you're putting a support for that claim, in the sense that, for example, when you fall from a building.
What do you mean to support from a claim? You don't think I can?
No,
you think it's impossible for me to will not to fall as I'm falling off a building?
I think it's arbitrary because there's other factors that come into play whenever.
What do you mean by arbitrary?
By arbitrary, that you're not bringing a case in which you separate the factors of the decision-making scale, separated from the own will of the person. So you're just claiming that the person has a will and the person can will not to fall, even though there's gravity. But you're saying how you have that will.
Well, but at this point, I'm not trying to tell you how. Let me just ask it this way: is it possible for me to fall from a building and not be able to do anything about the cause of gravity pulling me down, and yet still will to not fall? Is that possible?
Yes, but why?
Okay. Well, there you go.
No. I don't think you get me. So why you're not willing to fall off the building, for example, if someone is suicidal and let's say their life is horrible.
Yeah, but none of this. But all those are still influences. This is what I don't think. Yeah, this is why I think we're talking past each other here. Yeah. Well, if there can be a case that I can go, if I can will against a causal determining factor, if I can will against it, then it shows I don't have to follow every causally determining factor.
No, because I believe in my position, in my predetermined position, I would say the will itself is determined by other factors. That is the whole case that I'm trying to bring in.
How do you know that it is?
Well, because we don't have the proof of otherwise of how free will.
So you're saying we do have the proof. You're saying we do have the proof that everything is caused? Because even if we didn't have the proof,
I say we have to prove. Where do we draw the line from all the causes that that influence or cause a person to will something? Where do we draw the line from that, and from where someone can dismiss all of those factors and still cause?
Why? But so two things. You did it again. You said cause or influence. It has to be one. It can't be both. And then you said, where do we draw the line? What was it? I forgot the last thing you said. What did you say? Where do we draw the line? What?
Between the factors that influences someone's will and the person's ability.
Oh, right.
To
why? I don't need
other factors.
I don't need to draw lines for influences. That goes back to what I said. I don't need to draw a line between blue and the number 2. I don't need to draw lines. There's no line that needs to be drawn between influential factors and my will.
I think you do. For example, let's say that let's go going back to the pizza on Saturday analogy. So
no, because you're just going to repeat yourself. But we've been over this.
I'm not going to repeat it. It's actually different. I promise, man.
Are they different factors and same principle?
Yeah,
because
I'm going to put a different factor on it. So,
but that doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. That's irrelevant.
Let me just do it real quick, man. I promise.
Okay. All right.
I promise. Okay.
I trust it'll be different, but I don't think it changes the point.
Oh, okay. So you have the same factors. The girlfriend that wants to hang out on Friday. You have the T-shirt that put the situation. You got the person liking pizza, and you got the free schedule on Saturday. And now those will be all the factors for going on Saturday. However, we're gonna put something arbitrary, some some will inside of the person that can trump the person's decision, even though there's all the factors on going for pizza on Saturday. There's something arbitrary like a I don't know, a spirit or a soul that makes the person choose Friday, regardless of all the factors pointing out to Saturday. So I think that is the case that you're making. You're making the case that there's something external from the factors that can trump all the other factors of decision making for it to go the other way, even though all the factors can be weighed on one side of the scale. So that is what I want you to prove. I want you to prove what you are saying, that it is that external factor that lets the person be the first cause. I want you to prove that.
Well, so we are talking past each other, and I think it's in part because maybe I'm not getting your position, because it sounds like you're going from one thing to another. Like you said, that there's a will that can trump a person's decision. Well, the will is what causes a person's decision. So how can a will trump a decision that if a person's making a decision, there's nothing to trump. And I think you're equivocating some terms there. Let me ask you this. So we're both Christians, right? We're both brothers in Christ.
Absolutely.
Is there a case? So every time, so it's safe to assume that both you and I, on occasion, we sin.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you don't answer this, but for the sake of just a thought experiment, the last time that you sinned, did you have to sin?
I think I was predetermined to sin.
That's another thing that we haven't even touched on, because you keep using the word predetermined. I'm not sure what you mean. I don't know of any Christian that denies predestination. It's biblical. It's just, how do you define it? So I'm not talking. So let's just stick to, for the sake of conversation, because then we're going to have to get into how we define that. Let's just stick to determined, being causally determined. When you sinned the last time, could you have done otherwise?
No, I don't think I could have done otherwise.
Okay, well, Scripture tells us that we could have. Scripture says that every time that we're encountered with temptation, God provides a way of escape.
Yeah, I mean, that's whenever you get a new factor being plugged into the decision-making equation.
But we're not talking about, but I didn't even mention factors. All I said was, last time you sinned, could you have refrained from sinning? And the Bible says yes. Sorry, go ahead.
What is happening with the Bible verse here is that we got to know what the Bible means by there being other escape route for that. So it means that there's other path that can be chosen, and the problem is, how do we choose that other path?
That's not the problem.
Well, I think it's in the eisegesis on the part.
But no, hold on. No, first of all, you just agreed with what I said. The Bible says, you said that it does say we can choose another path. You just put it in different words. So we agree on what the verse says here. And hold on. And that my only question was, because you keep wanting to go back to factors, I'm trying to clarify the conversation by just sticking to one point. If you agree that the Bible says that when we're tempted, God provides another path we can choose, which is what you said, then you would agree with me that the last time you sinned, you didn't have to sin. There's no eisegesis there. That is what Scripture is clearly saying.
No, there is an eisegesis, because we need to interpret in which way we can take the other path.
No, we don't. Where do you get that from?
Either a predeterministic sense.
What verse is that?
No, man, don't play that game, man.
Well, you're the one that accused me of eisegesis, but what you just said is not in the verse. So it seems like you're the one committing eisegesis here, not me.
Eisegesis is putting something into a text. So, for example, if it says...
No, I know what eisegesis means, but show me in other words, for you to not be committing eisegesis, you would have to show me where in that verse it says we have to interpret how to choose the other path. Show me where it says that. Otherwise, that's eisegesis.
No, I think the problem you're making is that you got to analyze the ontology of a specific word. For example, if for example the Bible mentions a chair, you don't have to assume that a chair is a four-legged object meant to for someone.
Can you go back to the verse?
There could be another that's what I'm trying to say. That you have to analyze the ontology of the words that are being used. If
So
the
do that for me.
um, okay, for example, there's another path that could have been chosen. That means that there's other now with the other set of factors that you're learning now from the Bible, you can now derive to take the other path. So there was another possibility that you could have done at that specific time. The problem is, how do we know how you would get to the other path? And that
So let's clarify here.
the
You're
Bible
agreeing with me.
the Bible is not showing all of that philosophy. The Bible is just putting the anthropomorphic perspective, and it is up to us through the loss of logic to analyze what it means. So that is where our disagreement is. You cannot
But
we
okay,
cannot
no.
free
You're
will
making
determinism in my case.
you're making way too many points at once. One point at a time. Are you agreeing with me that Scripture is telling us that when we're tempted, we can choose another path other than giving into temptation? Is that what it's saying?
Yeah, the problem is what it means to
Okay,
have.
no. Wait. You said yeah. You said wait. No. Time out.
Yeah,
One thing at a time.
is, we gotta
Hold
know
on.
what
No,
is
wait.
what is the show.
Time out because I can't. If we talk at the same time, I can't hear what you're saying and our voice cuts out.
That's a 30 time.
You,
That's pretty dirty, man.
I can't. I really can't understand you. Say it again. When we're both talking, your voice. Say like right.
I think that's a dirty tactic, man. That is why I'm interrupting, because it's a dirty tactic.
What's dirty?
Um, just because I say yeah when you say choice, you don't know what I mean by choice. As I present, I have another definition of choice with my predeterministic decision making scale. So it is a dirty tactic that whenever I say yeah, you say okay, so we have a choice. Now you say okay, you agree to free will. No, that's not how it works, man. And,
No. Okay, that's not what I was trying to do. Maybe I misunderstood you. Forgive me if it came off as a dirty tactic. Let me just reiterate. In other words, I'm just looking for whether we agree here or not. That's all I'm trying to figure out. My question was, do you agree with me that according to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, it says, "No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear." And the last part of this verse says, "But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it." So my only question is, are you agreeing with me that Scripture is telling us that when we sin, we could have chosen a different path? Yes or no?
what I understood from the verse you read was that God provides a different path that can work within the other factors that are on our environment. That is what I'm understanding. For example,
You got that from the verse?
that is what I understand from my perspective, from my predeterministic perspective.
Okay, then
How it works within my worldview, pretty much, because as
okay, but hold on though.
same text, we're reading the same text, but we've got to put our presumption.
Yeah, but no, hold on though. I'm just trying to figure one thing out. So, I'm not asking you how you interpret the verse. I'm simply asking, do you agree with me that when you're tempted, you can sin or not sin? Are you agreeing with me that Scripture is telling us that we can choose either one of these two? As saved, regenerate believers, do you believe that this is what Scripture is telling us, that when we sin, that when we're presented with temptation, we can sin or not sin?
It is
Are you
possible
agreeing?
the external factors that are being played into place. And
what is this verse saying is what I'm asking.
What I want to clarify is that before we went to the live stream, we agreed to first discuss the underlying assumptions of what we mean by choice in our decision making, very much solve the free will problem before we can get into the text, because that is the exact problem that we talked to before the live stream. The exact same problem that I predicted, that we're gonna put a Bible verse, and both people are gonna try to put their own presumption on the term of choice. What pretty much means choice, but what it means for something to be a choice. That is the question at hand. That is why we agreed to a philosophical discussion instead of a biblical one in this live stream. And I think we should keep to what we agreed to.
Well, we agreed to it like 5 minutes before we jumped on, but that's fine. I didn't mean to try to jump to the Bible. I'm trying to find where we agree, and I figure we would agree on a verse in Scripture, but maybe not. I think we do. I think we just have different interpretations, like you're saying.
Exactly. I think we both understand the same text.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know at this point.
The Word of God to both of us. The problem
Yes.
is, how do we interpret it? And when it says choice, or you could have taken the non-sinful path, well, we got to analyze from an external sense the decision-making process from which from which God could be talking about. So we don't know what God is talking about, either free will or predeterminism. That is why we discuss a philosophical discussion to see what choice actually is before we jump into the Bible and read it.
Yeah. And this is what I was trying to do, was I was trying to separate two questions, which I think you're confusing the two. For example, we're Christians, we're not Mormons. If I was sitting right next to a Mormon, someone could ask me, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God? Eric, what's your answer? I say yes. Mr. Mormon, sir, what's your answer? He says yes. And then we can go to the next question. Okay, now what do you mean by Jesus is the Son of God? So in other words, these are two separate questions, and that's all. I wasn't trying to mix the two. I wasn't. That's why I was going to the verse to at least find out: do we agree that in some instances we can choose an alternative thing than what we did? So I think you think I was trying to pull the, mixing the two questions, but hopefully that Mormon illustration clarified. A Mormon will say, yes, Jesus is the Son of God. I say, yes, Jesus is the Son of God. But then the next question is, what do we mean? So I was just asking the first part of the question, do you agree with me that there can be a different choice taken other than to sin? I wasn't trying to bring in interpretations just yet, and you were jumping right into the interpretation. That's why I was trying to tell you to hold on, slow down. I just want the first answer before we go into interpretations.
I agree with everything the Bible say, and I'm willing to change my mind based on whatever the Bible says. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's a problem of interpretation. How do we read the term of choice in it? But yeah, I guess we should move on from this example, because as we mentioned, we already agreed before the election, which I guess we should have talked a little bit before. I put the blame on that on myself for not maybe not put the specifics of the live like much before this, because it was 5 minutes before, but it was an agreement. So we can later have a Bible discussion, but I guess we're just gonna go in circles if we don't go with the philosophy that we're actually gonna read into the text to see what God actually means when something appears like a choice.
Yeah, well, maybe if so, I guess then just to leave verses aside, then maybe I should just ask it this way. Maybe I just should have started by asking this way. So I apologize here. Do you think there is any instance where we can choose something other than what we had chosen before?
No. If the same factors are unchanged, you can't choose otherwise. If there's new factors that weigh to tip it into the other decision, like to make the scale even heavier, then you will inevitably choose otherwise. But
see, so, yes, but this is why I think we're talking past each other. I promise you, I'm not trying to get a gotcha question on you, and I think you think I'm trying to, because if we were to rewind the tape, your answer should have been yes, not no, and then go into an explanation. And here's why. I understand the deterministic position. I understand determinism, and I understand self-determinism, otherwise known as compatibilism. Even a determinist should agree that when I do something, I could have done otherwise. So the answer to that question is yes, but then they can further explain after they've answered the question that, however, in order to make a different decision, the determining factors had to have been different in the first place. So in other words, when I say, do you think we could have chosen otherwise in a given situation than what we did in the past, your answer should be yes. And then you can explain, but only if the the causal factors change. But you
Yeah,
said no, and then you went to explain it. But I think your answer is yes. So I think you're trying to answer a question ahead of what I'm asking, and I think that's why there's some
I would
confusion.
agree with you. The reason why I'm not agreeing to why I didn't agree before to the ability to choose otherwise was because I don't know what you mean if you mean the well it's because you can choose otherwise, but in a position in a predeterministic sense and your position in a free will sense. So I just didn't want it to get those baggages and you say, you can choose otherwise, therefore free will. No, it's
But that's what I'm saying, though. You think I'm trying to, but that's what
no,
I'm saying. You think I'm trying to get you in a gotcha question. Don't assume ill intent if I haven't shown any. I think you've interpreted ill intent in all my questions, and that's why it's hard to have a flowing conversation, because every question I pose, you interpret it as if I'm trying to trap you somehow, and you immediately get defensive. I'm just trying to find out where we stand, because this is our first time ever having a dialogue like this, so I'm not familiar with your position. So I'm going to know where we agree and don't agree. But if you're going to assume some type of a trap and start to try and respond to an alleged trap I'm not even setting, it's going to make it for a harder conversation.
yeah, no, you're good, man. I guess I'm doing a little bit of that. Maybe I took it this way. I took it that way, maybe getting a gotcha moment because it would say discussion, man, it's going online and stuff. So I guess I apologize for I know you're good, but for example, like I can have great intentions with my friends whenever we're having discussions. Like I love them, I want to have a great discussion with them. But you sometimes can go for gotcha moments, even though you love the other person. I mean, you still kind of prove your position right. I mean, I guess I'm sorry, man. I'll pretend that we're not going to read bad intention. Well, not bad intentions, but gotcha moments into a person. I haven't read a bad intention on your part, but gotcha moments. Whether that's bad or good, I mean, that's another discussion. But
Yeah.
yes, I honestly, I'm not surprised that you haven't heard this position because I think the predeterminists that are online are pretty bad, honestly, and I don't think they exploit free will that well. So I've been developing some of my own arguments, some of my own stuff. So I just didn't know if maybe you encountered some of these arguments before, but it's very cool that you have. I mean, so maybe we're into something. I don't know. And I guess we can move the discussion a little bit. What about we talk about randomness and patterns? So, is in your position free will necessarily random, or is there an ordered pattern from which one can a pattern that is ordered and that can be deciphered because patterns can be deciphered because nothing is truly random. Randomness is impossible. Is free will random or is free will ordered? Pattern.
Well, I think it's a borderline false dichotomy, because I don't think it has to be either or, and I don't even know if it's a borderline category fallacy, because I'm not even sure if that would apply. But um, I guess to try and answer the way you're asking, I would say that my free will is ordered, and it's ordered by me. My choices are ordered by me.
I think it's a true dichotomy. I wouldn't say it's a false dichotomy. I think it's a true dichotomy because it's either A or not A. Or
Sure, fair
not.
enough.
So order.
What I should have said
So,
was an applicable dichotomy.
okay, and so with this dichotomy, with this true dichotomy of order or non-order, A or not A, where would you say that free will falls into? Does it fall into true randomness, or does it fall into an order or pattern?
Well, I guess I would have to know what you mean by order or pattern, because it would seem as if order or pattern is implying some type of prior record of existence. But if let's say we meet someone for the very first time, or a baby has just been born, even babies when they're born have their own type of unique characteristics and cries. So there's no quote order or pattern, if by that you mean some type of a track record. But you can also, by order, you can also mean, is there a certain inclination that I tend to do on the basis of my character? Sure, but that's the reason I say it's an unapplicable dichotomy, is because that doesn't answer the question of whether or not I have free will or don't have free will. I love my wife, and every time I see her in the morning and before I go to bed, I give her a kiss good night and good morning. So you could say that there's an ordered pattern to my life, but that doesn't answer the question of whether or not those actions were free or not free. Whether they're ordered or not doesn't get to the heart of the issue of the question, am I the source of my will and action?
I think it does, actually. I think it's, for example, you can put it also as a dichotomy, as a true dichotomy. Either you can put it either something determined or non-determined, and free will fall into the non-determined category. So something has to be either determined or not determined. So now putting these dichotomy into the other dichotomy of something either being random or ordered, randomness cannot be deciphered, and something ordered can be deciphered. So let me expand a little bit, so you can get what I mean by an order that can be deciphered. So, for example, if you have a order of a mathematical equation of 2 plus 2 equal 4, you can have a pattern that if you add 2, it's that you can't, or not just 2, but 2x or 2 whatever, you would say that there's a uniformity in the laws of logic from which you will have a coherent, predetermined equation within the mathematical equation itself. And the same thing when it comes to computers. Whenever a computer is trying to accomplish something random, like you got to put like a software for getting a random number in your computer, the computer actually is programmed to give you a random number. So it's not truly random. It's just a extremely complex system from which it gives you a number from that algorithm within the computer. But the computer is programmed, and the computer, by being programmed, the computer is predetermined. So if something has order and something has a pattern, I'm arguing that by necessity is predetermined by necessity. So if free will either has order or not order, if it has order, if it has a derivable pattern, then is by necessity predetermined, and free will cannot be not determined and determined at the same time. So it's either or. So it's a self-contradiction, therefore impossible. So either you have to answer to me, is free will ordered and it's a pattern, or is it truly random? What would you say it is?
Well, I think I already answered that. I think it's ordered by me.
What does that even mean, man?
that I choose how to order it. Just like the programmer chose how to program the random calculated number, I choose how to program what I will or decide to act on.
Oh man, I don't think that works like that. Seems
Sure it does.
Somehow, although it's a little bit hard to pinpoint where the fallacy.
Let me ask this: do you think could God have predetermined me to have free will?
Could God have predetermined you to have free will? No, because it is either randomness or it is order. So,
but that's what I'm saying. If He predetermines it, God has ordered that I have free will.
Well, can God create a myriad dash, or can God create a square circle?
So you're telling me it's logically impossible. By saying that, you're implying where's a logical possibility? You're saying it's logically impossible for God to predetermine and order me to have free will. Where's a logical contradiction?
Because free will either has to have an order or being truly random.
You've already said that.
It's a true.
You've already said that.
You say order. If it's say order, then it's like saying, could God predetermine be predetermined? So it's the same thing. So it's either predetermined or predetermined. I don't think there's any possibility for free will at all.
So I still think that God can order So you have something ordered. God can order me to have free will, and he can predetermine that I order my free will. So he's just passing along order onto me for me to order something, and yet there's still free will. So if that's even possible, which I think it is, otherwise you have to show me the logical contradiction, then you can have something being both ordered and free. And then maybe I guess I could say it would be a false dichotomy.
I already explained that. I don't think you got my explanation.
I did. That's why I.
Free will, it is either ordered
No,
and
I know.
necessity, predetermined, or random.
And I gave you a counterexample. Repeating yourself won't help it. I'm giving you a counterexample to what you're saying. So you can't just repeat it. You have to respond to my counterexample.
Yeah, but I would say your example is arbitrary because you're saying that I can predetermine my own actions, but how do you determine your own actions? Let's go back.
Arbitrary means like arbitrary means like I'm giving my own preference. Even if that were the case, that wouldn't mean I was wrong. Nevertheless, in other words, the accusation of arbitrary doesn't do anything at this point. Why is it logically impossible for God to pass order along to me and allow me to order my free will?
I don't think it's possible for you to have
I know. Why is what I'm asking.
It's because I think it's going to take us to the same explanation that I already gave. I don't see how I can explain it in some other way. It's it's what I already explained, man. I don't see what else you're asking me.
Okay. Does God have? Do you think God has free will?
He has his own will, so he's self-determined. Pretty much, he himself he derives his own conclusion based on himself.
So with God, is it ordered or random?
Ordered.
But what determines him?
Himself.
Oh, so you can have free will and determine your own order.
Because if you analyze the ontology,
that was a gotcha, by the way. I should have warned you.
Well, give me 1 second, man.
That's good. That's good. I like that.
But yeah, I don't think it's a gotcha moment because if you analyze the ontology of God, you will realize that God is, well, I mean, you already know this, of course. You're a way better apologist than myself, man. And
I just make stuff up.
Yeah, probably. No, I'm just kidding. So the reason why the ontology of God actually brings this problem to be much more different is because we are contingent beings, and God functions as a necessary being, as the first cause of everything else. He is beyond time, space, and matter, and we are within time, space, and matter.
Therefore, I don't think he's beyond time. I think he's in time.
Because there's nothing beyond God. There's nothing beyond God. Therefore, nothing can cause God. When it comes to there's a lot of stuff beyond humans, like God, angels, heaven, the non-material.
Yeah. Can I jump in here?
Sure, jump in.
So if you're going to go that route, at this point, I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with you, although I do. But if you're going to take that route, then I would suggest, my own 2 cents, that you reformulate your argument to include that qualification in there. Because earlier you said it's logically impossible for there to be free will with order, but then you just conceded that God can do it, which means it is not logically impossible for that to be the case. You would just have to say only God can have that be the case.
No,
so you have to qualify your argument there.
I'm arguing that God is self-willed, not that God has free will. So God has an order, an order of things he does, an order of things he does not do.
Say the first thing again. I didn't hear you.
That God is self-willed, so willed by himself, by his own will. He pretty much is. So the way it works is that God,
and that's free will.
God has patterns from which he makes decisions from where that comes within himself, but he is order. Would you say that God is order or God is disorder?
Well, that's what I asked you. That's what I was getting at with the free will. So just like God is self-determined in his will, I don't see why us being made in His image, why He can't pass that along to us.
Well, God making someone in our image, I think that's a big discussion in and of itself. There's a lot of views on what it means for humans being made into God's image. So I wouldn't say we can just plug in that because something God has a certain attributes and we're made on God's image, therefore we have the same attribute.
Well, that's not what I said.
I think that's a little bit sloppy there, but.
But that wasn't my argument. That's a straw man now. That's sloppy. That's a sloppy accusation.
If it was, I apologize, but I don't think it was a strong man. But okay.
In other words, I'm not saying that because we're made in God's image, what He has, we have. I'm saying, given the fact that we're made in God's image, it at least makes it plausible that we have some of the personal attributes that He has, not His divine attributes, not His omniscience or holiness or anything like that. But, like, for example, part of what it means, I would say, to be a person is that you have a certain a level of higher cognitive ability and capacities. So I think that is in part what makes us like God, is the level of rationality we have. So I'm saying we have the capacities we have in part because we're made in God's image and we reflect some of His personal nature. Hence, we too are persons. So I wasn't saying because He has it, we have it, because that would apply to that as if that applies to all attributes. I'm saying, given the personal attributes, I don't see why, if God being a person can be self-determined and have order and free will, then I don't see why us as persons being made in His image can't have that either.
I don't see how that argument helps your case. I don't see how we can make the connection that that we can be the first cause, because we know that God is the first cause of everything. So,
Of what?
It could be our first cause of everything.
Well,
God is the
God
first cause of everything.
of existence. I would say God's the first. And here's another common confusion I see when I bring up the argument of being first causes. There's a distinction that needs to be made between the first cause of existence versus a first cause of my will or actions. God is the first cause of my existence, but that doesn't mean He's the first cause of my actions. Otherwise, you're going to have to say that when I sin, God caused it, if you're going to call Him the first cause of everything.
I think it's now a great time to jump into the theodicy of how we analyze what pretty much if God is the crazy doctor analogy of a doctor pretty much causing you to do something for being the first cause, and therefore you're not responsible and the doctor is responsible. I think we should jump into that because that's the topic you're touching right now. So I guess I will present I will present a theodicy just to make sure we're both supposed to bring our burden of proof for our positions. So let me know if you have heard of this theodicy before. So I try to call it the theodicy of appreciation by comparison. So the way it works is we can appreciate something else. For example, we can appreciate the taste of pizza because of the existence of the taste of dirt or the taste of.
I'm still here.
Whatever that taste is bad, whatever you want to plug in. You can appreciate a Lamborghini because of the existence of a Honda. You can appreciate gold because of the existence of copper, and so on and so on. You can appreciate things because of the existence of something of lesser value within its ontological purpose. So, oh man, I feel like I'm talking to no one, man.
Sorry, I'm adjusting something.
Sheesh, now you're good. I put this meanwhile.
I had no free will to do otherwise.
Yeah, you were predetermined. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so how do I turn this? Oh, yeah, it's off now. So the when it comes to the theodicy of appreciation by comparison. So if God's will of having us appreciate something by comparing it to something else is sufficient as for God's purpose to allow evil in the world, I don't think we will need a free will to put it in anywhere, because free will it's pretty much was developed as a way to deal with the problem of evil. So if we have a way in which God is morally justified by putting us in a situation of learning, of appreciating something by comparing it to something else, I will claim that that is a sufficient reason of why God would put us in a situation of evil. And I will explain it with the following analogy. So first, we have to make a distinction between God's decree and God's um, desire for human action. So,
Can we take the first point that you made?
um, I guess, yeah.
So first I disagree that you don't need to compare something in order to appreciate it. I would reject that notion because, well, for many reasons. One, if how can I put this? God, we both hold to divine aseity, right? That God is the only self-existent thing, and I'm sure God could appreciate who He is, and even if we just existed in God, we could appreciate who He is without having to compare it to something else. There can be good without evil. So it seems like you're saying in order to appreciate good, we have to have evil. I would reject that because we can appreciate God and His nature without there ever have been evil. If Adam and Eve were in the garden, they could have appreciated God without knowing evil. So I would reject automatically that. Also, you keep going to this notion that we have that we're presupposing free will or that it's arbitrary or something. But I would, as far as I know, it's a consensus among scholars that libertarian free will is the default natural position to take. In other words, we're born with this sense of at least believing we have libertarian free will. So it's not. I would say that beliefs are innocent till proven guilty. So it's nothing I'd have to presuppose. It's kind of like existing. I'm born, and I believe I exist as an a priori belief. I think libertarian free will is a priori belief. And the burden of proof is on the person who rejects something that we intuitively believe to be true.
I would say that the burden of proof is on both sides, and you mentioned a lot of points right there. I guess we can start with the first point you mentioned. You'll let me know if I forgot one of the other points you mentioned. I probably already did forget some, but, but yeah, let's start with the
Your comparison principle is basically I'm saying that I reject that.
yeah. Let's start with that right now. So you're saying that we cannot appreciate God with the like we don't need the existence of evil in order to appreciate something else. But I would say that it's actually I was going to say biblical principle, but I'm going to say specific verses. It's more philosophical. But you can say, for example, God created heaven, and right here is going to be a test from which here on earth, from which we are going to learn to appreciate heaven, and we appreciate the second covenant because of the existence of the first covenant. The second covenant, you would say, it's better than the first one. Therefore, we appreciate it. Adam and Eve started appreciating the Garden of Eden when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Now that they are not into it,
they didn't appreciate it before.
they liked it, but that's all they knew. But now that they lost,
but they didn't appreciate it.
Now that they already lost what they already had, now if they were going back to the Garden of Eden, now they will appreciate it even more than before. But I believe that appreciation, either you are forced to either appreciate something by having it the comparison with something else, or you got to argue that it is that you can have the illusion of something of the same idea in order to appreciate something else, or just some singular state of mind. But if you notice that with the real world, you would see that we have appreciation by comparison with everything we do.
So you're telling me we could not have appreciated God's goodness without evil?
Well, it's because you got to understand what is goodness and what is evil. So,
well, yes or no? Are you saying, is that what you're saying?
I need to explain it. I'm not going to.
But is that what you're saying?
Answer them. Let me explain it. So, evil is the lack of God, the lack of godliness. Sin is a transgression of the law, not doing the law. God is pretty much. So it's a lack of. So it'll be the same way that that coldness is the absence of heat. So that
Mm-hmm.
that sin or evil is the absence of godliness. So in a place where there's absence of godliness, and we would say that hell, of course you would agree that God is not in hell. So there's absence of godliness in hell. There's absence of godliness in hell. Therefore, we can appreciate the degrees of God of where He's present and not present. His presence and absence, pretty much. So we can appreciate God, but we appreciate more of God whenever we experience the lack of God, the lack of godly values, and that's what makes Christianity. That's what makes in this world we experience sin, and we pretty much have to fight it now. Now, when you compare the worldly life that you lived before, now you appreciate the godly life because of all the problems that the ungodliness and falsity and all the negative things of the worldly life.
So can I ask? Because I'm still unclear, because all you did was just give examples back to what you originally said, that we need to appreciate are you saying that we need a contrast to something in order to appreciate it?
Are we what?
Are you saying that we need a contrast to something in order to appreciate it?
Well, a contrast helps with appreciation, yes.
But I'm not asking if it helps. I'm saying
I think it's necessary. Yes, I think it's necessary.
You think it's necessary?
Yes.
Okay. This goes into this. I very much reject that, and this gets into a lot of problems. I'll just mention a few. So these are counter examples to what you're saying. Have you ever experienced an existence where God does not exist?
We of ungodly values, we can pretty much.
That should be an easy yes or no. The answer is no. We've never existed without God existing, right?
Does God exist in hell?
He's omnipresent.
So you're saying that God is in hell right now?
I'm saying that God is omnipresent. He's constantly active. Are you assuming that God has a physical location? Because that's not what omnipresence means.
That's not what I'm saying.
But let me go back to my question. Let me go back to my question. Have you ever experienced existence without God? No, because God is necessary. So by your own standard, you're going to have to say we can't appreciate God's existence because we've never had an existence without him. I think that's absurd. So I think you'd have to reject it there. Here's another one. Here's another one. Is that okay? So I've been married to my wife for 6 years. This is my first and only marriage. Are you telling me I can't appreciate my marriage because I can't contrast it to another marriage?
You could. I mean, if you see, for example, some drug addicts that are married and they fight all the time, you would appreciate even more the marriage that you have with your wife. And now going back to the other example,
even wait, you said even more. So you are saying I can appreciate it without contrasting it to being divorced, right?
So it makes it a higher value.
But that's not what I'm asking. You said it was necessary.
Okay, so
but now
let's say that gold is the only metal on Earth. So I guess if let's say there's humans and there's just gold, there's nothing. Would you say that you have two worlds? You have one world in which everything there is just gold, and there's nothing to compare it to, and pretty much just is. So something just is. And you have the second world in which you have gold and copper or pizza or whatever you want to compare it to. So you got two worlds. In one world, something just is you can appreciate it because you need something to compare it to in order to appreciate it. It just is. So in the other world, you have something to compare it to, therefore you can appreciate it. So that's what I would say is the distinction. Something just is whenever there's no comparison to appreciate.
Yeah, and I think that's false because God prior to creation, logically prior to creation, existed and he just was, but he was still appreciated.
Okay, so you would say that there are not. Would you really argue that there's no degrees in which we can be in the presence of God? So whenever the
no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. No.
Wait a second.
But I answered your question. No, I wouldn't argue that.
1 second. Okay, all right. So there's degrees in which you experience God, right? Then.
Of course, but that's not your argument.
No.
Your argument was it's necessary to even appreciate in the first place. I'm saying no, and you just admitted. So you're actually backpedaling now. You're actually now saying, okay, well then it's not necessary to appreciate it. but it's necessary to have different levels of degrees. I'm fine with that, but that wasn't your original argument.
My original argument is that we can appreciate something because of the existence of something else. If there's no something to compare it to, then something just is. There's not appreciation, or mostly comes when you compare it to something else. I don't see how you can appreciate something.
So here's, so I think I'll let the listeners just kind of chew on that, because I think I've sufficiently given counterexamples. But here's the next problem I would have with that. If I have A and B, or A and not A, you're saying in order to appreciate one, I have to have the other. But then this kind of leads into either an infinite regress or a chicken and egg problem. If I have A and not A, which one do I need first to appreciate the other one? Or do I need both at the same time, in which there was never a case where I had both at the same time? So again, it's almost like going to an infinite regress. At what you need, you're going to have some type of bedrock to start with appreciation before you can start comparing it to. Otherwise, how do you even know what you're comparing in the first place?
Well, that's why I would explain it in the sense of degrees, not total absence. So something can be partially good, something can be more good, more or less good. So the way it works, for example, I will present this analogy. So let's say you have I can put as an example.
So I can appreciate something.
Okay, so let's say rape. So let's say that I know a terrible example. I know. I mean, so maybe there's a person that rapes someone, which is evil, but for example, it is not as evil. It is more evil if not just rape, but also not giving that person a glass of water, or torturing them, or burning them, or killing also their family. So it can get more evil the more things you add into, and it can get more good the more things you take off from those evil values. So now you take off rape, you take off torture, you take off all the other factors, you lead with something that is good. So something are good by default, as everything God creates is good, but you start getting different degrees of evil within every single step that goes into place, pretty much. And
so I'm still confused. Do you think I can appreciate something without having something else to compare it to?
Something just is. If there's not something to compare
can you please answer yes or no? Because I just need a straight answer.
Okay, what is appreciation then?
Well, you're the one that said it. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. This is your argument.
I would agree. I would argue that appreciation it's something that it's a state of mind of being pleased with something after experiencing something else.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, then there. See, okay. So you are saying what you initially said is that it is necessary to have something to compare a thing to in order to appreciate it at all. Is that correct?
Yeah, and now if you're going to bring the God example, you can appreciate degrees of God. You can appreciate a bigger presence, as you agreed already. There's different degrees of God.
But
so if you
that contradicts your argument.
No, it doesn't. You can
yes, it does.
A higher degree of God.
No.
Degrees of God. Yeah,
no, that because there was never a point where God didn't exist. So if it's necessary to have
that is not what I'm arguing at all. I'm never arguing that there's no place where God doesn't exist.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. It goes against your argument, because your argument is in order to appreciate A, I have to have not A. But if you're going to argue that this is necessary, then you're going to have.
That's not my argument. I'm saying that either A or not A, or degrees of A.
But okay, but how can you have degrees of A? Okay, but if you can have degrees of A without not A, then you can appreciate something without not having it.
I would say something.
And thus
something just is.
I don't even know what that means. But if you're gonna allow me to have degrees of appreciation for something without having its opposite, then you just proved your argument incorrect.
Can you repeat that again?
If you're going to concede that I can have degrees of appreciation for A without having not A, then your entire argument is just proven incorrect.
No, So how would you put that with the example of, let's say, hotness and coldness? How would you read that explanation that you just gave into the relationship between something hot and cold?
You can appreciate or recognize or experience hot without cold, and you can experience coldness without heat.
So you will be talking about the absolute absence of, um, but it doesn't. I don't see how that doesn't make much sense, man. Something doesn't make sense there.
It's
Uh,
your argument.
I was going to your argument, man. So I can play.
I mean, and let's even set aside the God question. You've never experienced non-existence. That doesn't mean you can't appreciate your life. I'm assuming you're not married yet, correct?
No.
But you can still appreciate what it's like to be single, even though you've never been married. So again,
No,
I
but
think it's I think it's indefensible to say that in order
no,
to appreciate something, you have to.
this is a philosophical position, but it's based on the on biblical positions for because God decreed one thing in the sense of us being in a place where there is evil, where there's degrees of goodness, and when there's yeah, pretty much lesser degrees of non-goodness. So that is where the theodicy wants to go in. So in the sense that
Has evil always existed?
evil always existed. I don't know what existed before the earth. To be honest.
God.
Can God have luck? Yeah, that's true. But can God show Himself in different degrees to a human?
It's not what I asked. Has
Well,
evil always existed? It should be a simple answer. You're a Christian.
mm, I would say evil. Well, I would say yes because it's the absence of God. Or
Dude.
dude, no, we're talking.
Bro.
Man,
I'm gonna say a prayer right now. Everybody stretch your hands towards the screen to my
no.
brother Israel.
Calm
And we're
down.
gonna lift our
Calm down. So evil is not a property in and of itself. So evil cannot exist if God doesn't exist. So if God exists, there must be degrees of he yeah. There's degrees of in which God shows Himself to humans. So evil is
no,
the
what I-
no, wait a second. So evil is a human perspective on how we analyze what is the degrees of God, lower degrees of experiencing God. So it is evil is a human perspective. It is not something in and of itself. So if you ask, you're asking the wrong question. If evil always existed, I think that's the wrong question. I think that's like more of a how humans experience life.
I think you're calling it a wrong question because it's just proving your argument. Are you implying because you keep adding these qualifications that you keep having to defend off the cuff? Are you now saying that a necessary requirement for evil to exist is for humans to perceive it?
Mm, for well, it's for an agent to it's a perspective of an agent, I would say.
Okay, you farted. That's evil.
It's in my phone, but
No, whatever, dude. Don't try to blame it on the phone or the dog.
oh man.
Um,
Okay, well, I farted. Okay, I farted.
it's cool. You were determined. Uh, um,
What does button do? Let me see what it does. Oh yeah, thank you. Love you guys.
was that cheering? What,
Yeah.
what is going on? It's possessed, dude.
So it's determined to start clapping whenever I say something.
Clap if I won.
So let me turn it off. Okay, I think it's off now.
So, um, yeah. So I would answer easily no. Evil has not always existed because there was God without creation, and He's perfect and like nothing.
So God created evil. So it didn't exist.
No,
God created evil. Okay, so how did evil came to exist then?
by us failing to meet God's standard.
Okay, so failing to meet God's standard, that's the lack of godly standards, right? Lack of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it proves my point.
No, no,
No,
it proves something you and I agree with that you thought supported your point, but it's not it's irrelevant to your point.
no,
So no, okay. First of
but
all, no one disagrees, no Christian disagrees that evil is a lack of goodness and God's standard. No one disagrees with that. So that's not new to bring to the table.
mhm.
But every Christian should agree that logically prior to God creating anything, just God existing, there was no evil because God lacked nothing. Evil came into existence when he created either the angels or some other being other than himself, a contingent being that missed his moral standard. Then evil came to be, as you put it, that we both agree is a lack of God. So, in other words, if evil is a lack of God for the sake of argument, then when God existed by himself, there was no lack of God and hence no evil. So, no, evil has not always existed.
I would actually agree with your explanation, but so it comes into being as a byproduct. You would say we'll call it byproduct. What would you say that?
Sure, I wouldn't even say, I don't even know if I'd say it came into being, but we
Yeah,
had an instance of evil yes, as a byproduct of man falling
okay,
and
well,
possibly even the angels falling.
I mean that's consistent with my position. And
No, it's
something,
not.
yeah, it is, and something that I think it's I think it's
Evil's
a
contingent, right? Is what I'm getting at.
evil is contingent. Yes, of course.
Okay, then it hasn't always existed.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So
Uh, oh,
I guess when God creates something that can experience degrees of ungodliness and godliness, I guess that's when the byproduct of evil actually comes into place. Would you agree with that?
sure.
Sure, awesome. Well, we agree. I guess we kind of went off the hook for a while when we agree on pretty much evil and God. So, okay, so now let's talk about going at the beginning. Because now that I think about it, I think there was a red herring for you to start arguing about appreciation itself when the theodicy that I presented was actually about was actually about a lesson for humans to appreciate something based on comparing it to something else. I'm not talking about if about the humans having about the necessity of something to be compared to be appreciated. I'm saying that in this world that God created, we are in a situation in which the theodicy that solves the problem of evil is that we learn pretty good lessons from appreciating godly values by comparing it to non-godly values. So I think we went off the hook for quite too long for something that we shouldn't even
Well,
talk
but this is why
about.
I ask clarifying questions. They're not gotcha questions. They're clarifying. And you did say we can rewind it if we choose to. You did say that a contrasting a contrast to something is necessary for appreciation. And I asked that a number of times, and you said pretty much yes each time. So it wasn't a red herring. Perhaps you just maybe misunderstood my question, or you initially misspoke.
You know
But
what?
maybe we can.
Actually, I will grant that. Maybe I blundered. Maybe it's very possible. So I guess
Um,
I have to go back.
no harm, no foul. And maybe we can touch on one more point, and then I'll have to log off and
Mhm.
spend some time with the family. But here's one thing too that so given that you're a Calvinist and a determinist, um, let me just go at it this way. It seems as if you're saying it. Well, you are saying in order for us to at least appreciate better or degrees of something, we have to compare it to something. But if God causally determines all our thoughts, beliefs, and actions, then that's not necessary for us to appreciate something. All God has to do is boom, give us that appreciation that he wants us to have.
I'm not saying what should or should not happen. I'm saying the situation in which we are. And we are in a situation in which we can experience evil, the lack of godliness. And I would say you can make the same example, the same analogy. If you, for example, put a box and you put a mouse, and the only thing the mouse can do is it's roam around or eat food whenever it's hungry. So if in that closed box you put food or something, you put food, the mouse will inevitably eat food um, from the food dispenser unless you put some other factor into place. For example, now you can plug in more factors with, let's say, for example, if you put a lava pit between of 2 meters, which is let's say impossible to be jumped on for a mouse to the food dispenser. I don't think I think the mouse will be predetermined to not go for the jump to get the food, and so you could kind of set up a setup for the mouse to be predetermined to do a certain action. And when it comes to humans, I think that is why I was explaining the difference between God's decree and God's will for humans. For example, if you got a house and if that house, I decree my house to set it up whichever way I want. I got, let's say, my sofas and my desk and my computer, whatever. So I'm decreeing what the scenario will look like what the scenario will look like for my dog once I bring it in. So I decreed the scenario that the dog will play in, and then I will get my dog, and once I bring it into the house, it will be my will, my desire for my dog not to shoe my shoes, not to pee on my sofa, and not to destroy my computer. So I'm decreeing the scenario in which the dog will play into, but it is my will. My will for the dog is different. I have a will, so I decreed the house, and I will the dog to not act a certain way within the house. And I think we are in a pretty similar scenario. So God decreed this world in which we can experience what are called evil acts. So God doesn't want us to act on evil ways within this world. He decreed that there's going to be. He decreed here to be tornadoes. He decreed us to have sexual desires for reproduction. He decreed us to have um, um, hunger, like to sense hunger, to sense um, yeah. He pretty much decreed our biology of how we are gonna be acting within this realm, and he decreed the realm himself. But his will of how we act within the realm is pretty different. So that is where that is how the theodicy plays in of appreciation by comparison. I'm not arguing that it is the best possible world, but it is the situation in which we are, and there are lessons that we can appreciate by comparing it to evil actions. There's lessons that we learn from these decreed nature that we're into. So maybe tell me your comments about it.
I think it's arbitrary, and I disagree.
I think you're arbitrary, and I disagree. Let's go.
I mean, it. Yeah, I don't really think it helps the case given what I've already said. I don't. I can concede that you can have better levels of appreciation for something, but not that. But that's not needed for all things.
No, I'm
And
saying
I
that's
would.
the situation we're in. I'm not saying that it is.
Well, sure, but even. Um, yeah, I just don't think it's making the point, or at least not as strong as a point as I think you're making. But nevertheless, um, I'm a Molinist. I have no problem saying that God has predestined us in. some sense in the way that you're talking about. But of course, I would just unpack that differently. So my only focus when it comes to the question of free will is whether or not I am the source of my will or actions. If something else causes me to, I'm not free. And I would argue that if you're not the first mover of your actions, well, then you can't be held morally responsible. You can't maintain any type of intellectual integrity or rational responsibility. All your thoughts and beliefs are causally determined by external factors beyond your control, and you now have an undercutting defeater for any belief that you hold to.
No, I mean, I don't know if you want to close it right now, but yeah, that is one of the points that I wanted to get into. It will take us a while, but I don't know if you want me to explain it.
Let's go. Let's just do it for a few minutes. How can you justify any belief if all of your beliefs are determined?
Well, let's first talk about moral responsibility, which
well, no, let's do the. I want to do the rational one. That's going to be funner because we've kind of already talked about.
Oh, but you already brought the other one, and people are going to think that I'm not.
Gonna... No, we already talked about it. We've. you gave your theodicy.
Whichever way you want to go. So, what do you want me to answer then?
I think if you can answer the rational one, I think it would answer both.
Okay, can you ask the question again?
How can you justify the truth of any of your beliefs if all your beliefs are determined?
Actually, if it wasn't determined, I couldn't justify the truth of any of my beliefs. And I will use, for example, a computer. For example, when you make a computer and you program that computer, if it wasn't predetermined, you couldn't trust it. You couldn't trust it for it to do equations, for it to do live streams, if it wasn't predetermined to do live streams and to do mathematical equations. So it's playing within the laws of nature and in a
predetermined. You're not answering. So the question I'm not asking, can we trust something that is determined? If we're let's go with your analogy. The computer is predetermined, right? Pre-programmed. I'm not asking how can I trust it. I'm asking how can the computer trust its own thoughts? If I program a robot or computer to believe that the moon is made of cheese, and then I also program it to believe that the reason that it's true is because I am its God and I wrote a book that said the moon is made of cheese. How can the computer get outside of its programming in order to verify whether or not its pre-programmed determined beliefs are true or false?
We couldn't, and that is one of the things, a conclusion that you get from the transcendental argument of existence of God. Yes, let me say where it goes. So
I know the argument.
Yeah, it goes with epistemic certainty. We can be certain of something based on starting with God as the basis for our epistemology. So if God didn't exist, you wouldn't be able to know whether something is true or false. So, in the case, if we try to make the same relationship of epistemic certainty within the laptop to the programmer, to the laptop maker, the laptop wouldn't know without the need of the creator or laptop or programmer itself. So because of the existence of the programmer or the laptop maker, the only thing that the laptop itself can trust, the only thing the laptop itself knows is whatever the laptop maker gave it. So you need God in order to have certainty. So it's the epistemic certainty.
I'm not. First of all, I could care less about certainty. Certainty is not a requirement for knowledge. But let's set that aside.
Epistemic
let me put.
What do you want to call it?
No, let me put it in a way. Let me try to relate this here, to try and be brief. So you're a Calvinist. There's another Calvinist I can name, who are good friends of mine, and let's say that you both are going to make this argument. Although I don't think they would make the argument the way you made it. But let's say that they do. Or no, forget. Let's say John Doe is a Calvinist, and you both use the same argument. But then, well, before I go there, you would agree that God has determined everything, including our beliefs, correct?
Yeah, it's However, I would differentiate between byproducts or something direct and indirect causation. So I would say it's a
Okay,
causation based on our environment.
that's sure. Okay, that's fine. So we have Israel and we have John Doe Calvinist.
Mhm.
You both say the only way we can be certain or whatever have knowledge about something is if God reveals it to us or gives it to us, pre-programs it. But let's say that y'all start talking and y'all have just one doctrinal belief that's different than the other person. How do you know who's right and who's wrong if both of you are pre-programmed by the same God?
Well, you use the tools that got put into place. Um, for example,
But the tools you put into place were already pre-programmed for you to use, and you're still going to come to the same beliefs no matter what because you're pre-programmed to believe it.
no, but for example, that you can get those kind of problems with a chest engine. A chest engine can get some issue.
You farted again.
Yeah, sorry, man. Just some beans and Taco Bell. Sheesh, man.
Oh, it's good stuff. I'm so jealous.
Oh man. Oh man. How do you love Taco Bell when you can appreciate and compare by comparing it to real Mexican food, man?
I never said it was Mexican food. I wouldn't go that low and degrade Taco Bell by calling it Mexican food. It's
Okay.
manna, heavenly food.
You see how we can pretty much get into agreements with the laws of logic, even though it's predetermined. Isn't it fantastic, man?
Well, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about whether or not we can justify it.
Yeah, yeah, and I would
So,
say
so
we cannot justify it unless God exists. That would be the only way, and we
right,
don't
but
have
but I'm
that much.
but in
Okay.
the example, I'm conceding God exists.
Mhm.
Same God, you have the same beliefs about being pre-programmed to believe something, and yet you disagree on one specific doctrine. It seems as if the same God pre-programmed both of you with two different beliefs, which means you're going to have to concede that God gave one person intentionally a false belief and gave the other person a true belief, which means one of you two cannot trust the pre-programmed beliefs that God gave you.
No, I imagine. Let's use an analogy. We're going to put let's say there's two mice in a box, and it's a labyrinth, and so there's several ways. So let's say that one of the mouse calculates that the exit, let's say there's four holes. Let's say that one of the mice is telling the other one that it's through hole number one, and the other one is saying that it is hole number three. And well, just one of them must be right, but both are predetermined in this sense because it's a controlled box, and if it's just a labyrinth in itself, there's nothing else, so they just gotta go in. And so both have lack of information. So it is a predetermined scenario in which they are on, but they come to different conclusions because lack of information. So let's say that one of the mice has a smelling problem and cannot smell the cheese at the end of one of the holes of the four holes, and one of the mice can smell the cheese starting from hole number one, but the other one, let's say the other one has big claws, so the other one can climb and can see over the labyrinth that that the solution is actually for I mean hole number three. So it is it is more in the instance in the information that they have available. So the one of the mice just have the information available of his sense of smell from which he is making a decision, and the other one has the information based on how he climbed with his claws over the box to see where the end of the labyrinth actually is. So I would say that we can know who's right and who's wrong based on new plugged in information. So I would say that in every single instance, there's always information that is not included or included, which has a one person may have and another one may not have. So, for example, like as you are a
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I still don't think it addresses your perspective that God at every point in time has pre-programmed everything, including our thoughts and beliefs, and there was no point in time. There's nothing that happens on your view that God has not causally predetermined. And that's where I think the analogy fails. In the analogy, there's room where something's not pre-programmed, but that's not your view when it comes to us and God. And I'm saying that's where the problem lies. But I'll let you have the last say in response.
Well, I just want to ask you real quick. What do you said it was not pre-programmed? From the
On your view, there is nothing that happens. There's nothing a person believes. There's nothing that a person does that has not been pre-programmed, predetermined, whatever word you want to use, by God. So your analogy fails because in the analogy of the mice, there's information that they can learn that was not pre-programmed into them. Whereas on the real life theological belief that you have, at every point in time of your life, every one of your beliefs has already been causally predetermined by God.
No. If actually you paid pretty close attention to the way I phrased the analogy, I put the predetermined example that one mice a sense of smell, a good sense of smell, and the other one doesn't. And one mice,
yes, no, I understand that, but
doesn't. So they are predetermined to use whatever they have, and they cannot use whatever they don't have. So they are pretty much also predetermined. I'm not saying that the mice have any will whatsoever.
Well, of course they have a will. That's why they're doing stuff.
Oh, okay, so would you say that dogs have free will?
I tend to lean that way, but we're just taught. You said will, not free will.
I mean, I'm good with that. If you want to say that, let's go, man. We can close it there. Dogs have free will, man.
That's fine with me.
That's insane, man. Insane.
Because either it's true, and I freely came to believe that, or God has causally predetermined to believe something that's false.
Maybe you're acting within the creed. You're an agent that is acting within a creed world, and pretty much you have experienced certain information that I have not experienced, and I have experienced certain information that you have not experienced. That is how we come to different conclusions. But I guess we can close it.
But they're both determined by God, right?
Oh,
my beliefs.
I said I was gonna have the last word, man. I said I was gonna.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Nah, just kidding, man. Just kidding. Just messing with you. Okay, let me put this song. Okay, stop it. Yeah, it's weird. Okay, Eric, I want to thank you so much for coming and doing this live with me. I'm hoping that at least you had fun. At least it was interesting. Maybe you can tell me a little bit. Maybe if you ever had a kind of discussion like this with this type of arguments that you experienced today. It'd be pretty interesting because I've been working on this arguments, kind of trying to develop them myself, because I don't know that many authors that defend determinism and actually quite want to challenge the free will theodicy with a counter theodicy or something. But
there are some.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know anyone. I don't know that many Calvinist philosophers. I know Guillaume Pignon. I think he's fantastic, but I think the way he argues, he goes a little bit more into the planning God argument that God may have good reasons for whatever for the situation he put us in which we experience evil, but while rejecting free will, but saying, okay, I don't know what reasons would God have to be justified, but I know that he must have sufficient reasons. But my case has been, I'm claiming knowledge of what a sufficient reason could be, which is learning lessons by sharing something else. So it's, I don't know if you heard that before, something else, or you heard that.
Well, I haven't, but I don't think it's a tight argument. But again, I'm not a Calvinist, so I guess if I could just give some friendly brotherly advice, given that you're still trying to work through this, I would say go back and just brush up your terminology, because that was really confusing for me. And given that you're still working through this, I would say don't share it, not to share it. don't test it with someone who's not a Calvinist like myself, who's going to push back in a different way. I would say first go to people who you trust that are Calvinists and share it with them, and then they can help you. In other words, here's what I'm trying to get at. And at this time of night, my ADHD medicine is worn off pretty good, so my thoughts aren't as coherent as they are earlier in the day. But what I'm basically getting at is whatever you tell me, obviously I'm going to disagree with because I don't hold to a deterministic view of the will. So you're going to expect me to give you objections against your argument. Whereas if you talk to someone like one person, I would really recommend a good friend of mine, Eli Ayala, who's a Calvinist and a presuppositionalist. If you talk to him, you know that if he provides you with objections, it's not because he's coming from a libertarian free will perspective. It's because he may honestly see some holes or flaws in the argument that you could go back and work on. So I would say, so in other words, I wouldn't publicly share an argument you're working on like this with someone who is of an opposing view, because you're going to expect objections from me. Whereas someone like Eli, he'll be able to help you work through. I'm sorry.
That was actually the point. I wanted to test it with someone that disagrees with me. That's kind of why I chose you, and I'll probably be doing the same discussion of free will with probably other apologists out there. Maybe I'll invite, I don't know, Tim Stratton or.
Well, I'm saying because it was confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I would recommend maybe going next to someone who agrees with your position and seeing if maybe it's something that I just. In other words, I'm trying to just take the modest, humble approach here and say maybe I just missed something because of my disagreement, whereas someone who agrees with your position can share things or help you find maybe some potential issues or help clarify the wording better that even they would agree with, given that they would agree with your position.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, I told Eli. I talked to Eli also, and I told him to watch this live stream. I forgot to
What's
send him.
up, Eli?
I don't know if he's watching or not, but he's probably gonna watch it. Eli will love you, and tell us your feedback, I guess, on the debate. What you think about my position and Eric's responses.
Call me first, though.
Huh?
I told Eli, call me first.
Oh man, no, I talked to him first. You got to get in line. but yeah, I get you, man. I totally get you. But you know why I'm doing this debate? Because I'm open for free will, man.
Because you're determined. Oh, sorry.
I'm open. Oh man, I'm giving you props.
Sorry, it's late. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm open for free will, and actually, I'm open to the idea that you may convince me of free will because I respect you as an apologist. I think you're a great apologist. I think you do usually a great job when it comes to debates on free will. And I got you here because I think you may be one of the persons that can convince me of free will. But I'll be totally honest with you. I'm not convinced by your case. But I'm open if you want to have future discussions. I'm open to changing my mind and accepting free will. But I can't do that until it makes sense, man. And it just does not make sense at all. And by the question that I asked you before, how do you distinguish free will from all the other predetermined factors that we go on? But I guess we can maybe work into that a little bit more later on, but yeah, I'll be also talking to Calvinists. I'll try to talk to other predeterminists and see how I can get better and what I can learn more about free will. I'll try to also learn more about free will, man, not just predeterminism. Well, wherever the truth leads me, man. This is a pursuit of the truth. That's
absolutely. That's good. No, and I can appreciate that. Although I can't help but say that I do find it ironic that you think you have the freedom to come to a belief on this issue in the first place. But I can respect that, and hats off, man. Power to you.
Hats off to you, man, or breads off.
There you go. Very nice. I like it.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I guess we're gonna do a little bit Q&A, but as you see the millions of comments, I don't know where to start. 0 comments. I guess maybe in the future, but yeah, man, it was a big pleasure having you, man. It's been a pretty cool discussion. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. I had fun at least. I don't know about you, but Talk about stocks. Hashtag. You guys coming? Talk about stocks. And
I'm not gonna ever talk to you again if you bring that heresy.
oh, you're the heretic, man. You're comparing.
I really want to go get some Taco Bell.
You're comparing Taco Bell with actual tacos, man. Like,
No, I'm not. I'm telling you, that would be to minimize and degrade Taco Bell. It's manna from heaven. It's not Mexican food.
oh man, whatever that means, man. Whatever that means. Okay, but all right, man, and hope to see you maybe some other time, some other topic, maybe do an interview next time on your stuff. So I actually
Sure.
have some questions, some other personal questions that I also wanted to ask you. But yeah, I guess we'll close it out right now. Guys that are watching, thank you so much for watching, and hope you guys appreciate Eric by comparing it to me, the bad apologist over here. You guys appreciate him. Be predetermined to do so. So see you guys later, and hopefully we'll do other cool actions like this. But thank you, Eric. God bless you, and
No, yeah. Thank you. Let me pray real quick. Is that all right with you?
yeah, absolutely.
Lord, I thank you for my brother Israel, and I just pray, Lord, that as he's evidently enthusiastic and passionate about just finding truth, Father, I pray that your Spirit would guide him, Lord. I pray that you would direct him, Lord. Help him to just formulate his thoughts and come to true conclusions, Father God. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what I believe or he believes. I'm just saying, Lord, let him be guided by your Spirit. Let him be guided by truth. Let him be guided by reasoning. And I pray that you would just help surround him with people, Father, that can help build him up as an apologist, as a believer, and as a disciple of your word. We put all these things in your name, and we thank you for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Good to have you, man. So, yeah.
Yes, sir. Good talking to you, man.
Talking to you, man.
Talk to you later.